Hello respected viewers, it's George from Ireland, so welcome back to my channel once again. And in this video I'm going to be asking what's going to happen should Ukraine's counteroffensive fail. Because remember, Ukraine's counteroffensive has been going on for around 6 weeks now. And so Ukraine is fighting particularly in eastern Ukraine and in southern Ukraine, and they're trying to recover territory illegally occupied by Russia. They're not actually trying to gain territory that pertains to the Russian Federation. And yes, there have been occasional raids into Russia, supposedly by Russian dissidents, not the Ukrainians themselves, but presumably there's some Ukrainian soldiers doing it as well. At very least, some logistics support and some intelligence there. So attacking around the Bakhmut area, remember that Russia gained at monstrous cost earlier this year. Yevgeny Prigozhin, the capo of Wagner private military company, claimed that 25,000 Wagner troops were killed in that battle. Now, I don't see any reason to doubt him. That does actually tally with what is known. If it's not absolutely accurate, it's probably not far off. But partly to show how vital that Wagner is, he's also underscoring the way he is supplied with an insufficiency of ammunition. So yeah, they're attacking the Donetsk area, attacking in the Zaporizhia region as well, trying to get down to the Sea of Azov to break the land corridor between Russia and the Crimean Peninsula. And then there would just be these two bridges from the Crimean Peninsula to the Ukrainian mainland. Obviously, Crimea is somewhat supplied through the Kerch Strait Bridge, which has got both a road and a railway, obviously by ship, by air, but all that be highly vulnerable if the Ukrainians go down to the Sea of Azov, all that be well within range. But the Russians obviously foresaw this coming, and for a few months prior to this, they're building defences, actually quite formidable defences, anti-tank ditches, with plenty of machine gun nests with interlocking fields of fire, and plenty of landmines, anti-personnel mines, as well as anti-tank mines, and what was I going to say? Barbed wire. There's an ingenious method of clearing mines which I didn't know about until recently, and that's rats. Bizarrely, that especially trained rats, and they can smell whatever it is. I can't remember what the chemical is that's going to explode, and they can clear, sort of 10 square meters in a minute, which is far faster than technology metal detectors. And metal detectors waste their time digging up rusty bits of wire or old tins and stuff like that. And the rats don't take that long to train. They've got a working life of about 5 years. There's an unusually large rat on a lead. And then they sort of lose their skill. But they can only work a few hours a day, particularly early in the morning. But the Ukrainians' progress is slow. They're taking significant casualties. So they need to break through by November when the weather closes in. And this is painfully slow. Remember, last September there was a lightning campaign south of Kharkiv where they retook quite a lot of land. And that was really overshadowed by the death of the Queen. Had Elizabeth II not died, that would have been the front page all around the world for a fortnight. But it was knocked off the front pages by QE2. So I remember there was that Vilnius summit of NATO countries. President Zelensky attended. It was almost unique for a non-NATO leader to be invited to address them, and he didn't get what we wanted, didn't get an invitation, didn't get a membership, a target date for membership. Some, I suppose, speeded up access plan, and they're not going to let Ukraine join whilst it's in a hot war with Russia. That'd be the Third World War. And he's even unhappy that they're not being supplied with enough weaponry. And NATO's still not said, our equipment, you can use it in Russia itself. Because the obvious answer for the Ukrainians would be to flank the Russians. Russia has not built really defences in Belgorod region, which is adjacent to Ukraine. And the Ukrainians can just go through there into Russia and round the back of the Russian defences, something like that. But they're not doing it, certainly not with Western kit, because then they'd be cut off. Will they be too provocative? I mean, I think it's ridiculous, because Russia's taken all sorts of escalatory steps. Those F-16s and so on need to be supplied, give the Ukrainians air superiority. Because Putin thinks he can string this out, that Western will fail, and he might be correct in banking on that. So suppose we come to November and the Ukrainians have made minimal progress and suffered heavy casualties. A lot of Western supplied equipment has been destroyed. The Westerners might say we need to put our thinking caps on. Can we really afford to go on paying this amount of money for so little gain when the war has really got no end in sight? It's going on for a year and a half already. It could go on for several years. It's costly for Russia, but obviously the Western countries themselves are not under attack, and they're the ones not fighting it. And so that might lead to governments reducing aid, cutting it off altogether, twisting Zelensky's arm to go into negotiations. Recall his precondition, which is he shan't parley with Moscow until such time as Russia has completely and unconditionally withdrawn all its troops. Now, it's very, very hard to see them fulfilling all that. They could withdraw from one or two regions, but withdraw from even Crimea, I think Putin might be lynched by his own people. That was genuinely popular. And if they held the referendum on a fair basis, I don't doubt the Ukrainians would vote to join the Russian Federation. But remember, that's not the way it works with sovereign territory. You don't always get what you want. Remember, in Russia, you're extremist and banned if you advocate independence for your nationality, for any of these ethnic minority groups with their own language, with their own history of statehood going back centuries, or to join an adjacent country like China or Finland or wherever else. So, yeah, is it going to fail? It may well fail. I mean, I think its chance of actually reaching the Sea of Azov is only about 50% right now. And although Russia's taken significant casualties, it can reinforce places. And I reckon there'll probably be a mobilization in September. So, maybe after some local elections out of the way, things like that, and sufficiently far before Putin's re-election in March. Obviously, his coronation, the whole thing will be a complete charade. And the voices will grow louder. More Westerners will say, we can't have this raising oil and gas prices. Another thing is the Black Sea Grain Initiative is meant to be renewed tomorrow, if I got that right. Now, there have been contradictory noises out of the Kremlin. One, that they're going to renew it. President Erdogan of Turkey says Putin's told him that. And if that's true, if Putin reneges on his promise, then the relations with Turkey will take a turn south. Erdogan might feel humiliated, and he's a man of raging vanity. He does not like to lose face. It's quite an important relationship for Russia with Turkey. The only NATO country doesn't sanction them whatsoever. But Putin must be thinking, what's the gain for us in allowing the Black Sea Grain Initiative to go ahead? A bit of goodwill, and it helps our allies like Syria, Egypt, Bangladesh, or whatever, or neutral in this war. But really, it's a gain for Ukraine because they exported over 32 million tons of grain and other foodstuffs since it began a year ago. It boosts their economy. It's already shrunk 30%. It'll shrink even more without this. And maybe these developing countries will blame Ukraine rather than Russia. Obviously, that's completely specious. I mean, they might blame Ukraine, but it'd be ludicrous. There was no difficulty at all exporting this grain until Russia started its illegal war of unprovoked aggression. So Russia's entirely to blame for any paucity of grain. It could lead to more hostility towards the Assad regime. Remember, it's partly food prices that caused the Arab Spring in Egypt and in Syria way back in 2011. But having tried almost everything else, Putin might say, well, let's try this one. They're sending these drones at Kiev every night. The Ukrainians claim to shot down 20 of them the other night, suffered, superficial damage, almost no casualties, nothing significant hit. Now, the Ukrainians might be lying. They might be suffering a bit, but I don't think they're suffering very much. Pointedly, tellingly, the Ruskies aren't crowing about their success with that, and they really don't have anything else to do apart from turn the screws economically, so they could cut that off. So if this fails, then there might be a reduction in aid. I mean, it could go the other way, that the West is going to ramp up aid, but I don't see it, because I said, come on, we've given you from our own stocks, we have to defend our own countries, we can't afford to do this, there's a cost of living crisis, we don't want to spend more on defence, taxes are very high, the public might be wearying of this, so that might actually work in Putin's favour. I mean, if the West had supplied really excellent kit quite early on, this war might not have started or might have been over by now. But there might have to be some sort of liminality, there might be these constructive ambiguities, agree to disagree on the status of Lugansk and Donetsk, something like that, United Nations troops, these kind of compromises could work. So I think it's going to be a messy and rather dishonourable compromise. Yeah, Putin, I think, is probably not going to make old bones in the White House, not in the White House, in the Kremlin. It might be there in 6 months, but I don't think it's going to be there in 6 years. Right, thank you, goodbye.